buckle up because we're heading way back in time today. We're diving into ancient Egypt, or Kemet as they called it, and their claim as, wait for it, the first civilization. You guys sent in some incredible research on this, and I gotta say, I'm ready to be blown away. Well, it's a bold claim, for sure, but here's the thing about Kemet. They weren't just early to the party, they were practically throwing it in so many ways. So let's start with the basics. Ancient Egypt, we're talking more than just pyramids and pharaohs here and there, right? What was the heart and soul of this civilization? It all goes back to the Nile River. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's just a river, right? But the Nile was different. This wasn't some wild card flooding on a whim. The Nile was predictable, almost like clockwork. And that consistency, that was crucial, wasn't it? Absolutely. Imagine planning your whole agricultural year around where you knew the river would flood. That kind of dependability, it was like winning the lottery in the ancient world. So instead of just surviving, they could actually, well, build a civilization. Exactly. That dependability meant extra food, which meant more people. But here's the real game changer. Not everyone had to be a farmer anymore. They had the chance to specialize. Suddenly you got artists, scribes, priests, the whole works, all because the Nile kept things running smoothly. And you know, we gotta give a shout out to our source material here, researcher Sharri Plaza, who really digs into this whole first civilization debate. Putting the Nile aside for a second, what actually defines a civilization, officially speaking, of course? It's like a checklist, isn't it? You gotta have a centralized government, a way to write things down, monumental architecture, a unique art and culture. It's like the ancient world's version of saying, hey, we're here, we're organized, we're not going anywhere. And Kemet, they managed to check all those boxes. Not only did they check the boxes, they practically invented the checklist. Let's start with their government. Around 3100 BCE, King Narmer unifies Upper and Lower Egypt. That's right, a unified state thousands of years ago. Okay, now that's impressive, but what about communication? Every good civilization needs its record keeping, and regardless, their writing system also popping up around 3100 BCE. Now let's not forget their claim to fame, those monumental structures. The pyramids of Giza, built around 2500 BCE, they're still blowing minds today. Seriously, those pyramids, I remember seeing pictures as a kid and thinking, aliens. It's like they were determined to make their mark on history. Talk about a mark. The sheer scale of those projects, the insane precision, it's mind-boggling, even knowing how they pulled it off. Yeah, Kemet definitely knew how to make a statement. It wasn't all just showing off, was it? What were some of the things they accomplished beyond those iconic pyramids? What was going on behind the scenes, so to speak? Oh, get ready, because that's where things get really interesting. And we're back, diving deeper into the world of ancient Egypt. Before we took a little break there, we were talking about the pyramids, and you were saying there's more to it than meets the eye. Something about symbolism. Oh yeah, symbolism is everywhere in ancient Egypt. Take those pyramids, for example. They weren't just tombs. They were like giant ramps to heaven. So the whole shape, the sloping sides, it was all intentional. Oh, absolutely. Those sloping sides were meant to represent the sun's rays, guiding the pharaoh's soul upwards to the afterlife. Wow, so the whole thing was like one big symbolic gesture, and I'm guessing that wasn't just limited to the pyramids, was it? Not even close. Think about their temples, for example. They often have this central axis that leads you from a grand entrance all the way to the inner sanctuaries. It's like a physical representation of the journey from the earthly realm to divine, built right into the architecture. So you'd be walking along this path, and you practically feel the symbolism all around you. Speaking of architecture, you mentioned that the ancient Egyptians were masters of something called axial alignment, right? That sounds a little technical. What exactly does it mean? It's actually pretty straightforward. It just means lining up important elements along a straight line. It's like a visual power move. It creates a sense of order, of purpose, even grandeur. And they use this power move everywhere, everywhere. Temples, tombs, even their cities were laid out using these principles. And you know what? We still use it today. We do. Think about those long walkways leading up to important buildings, like government buildings or war memorials. It's axial alignment. Are you saying those memorials are channeling ancient Egypt? Well, maybe subconsciously, yeah, but think about it. You approach one of these buildings and you get this feeling of awe, right? Part of that is the axial alignment. It's this design principle we're practically hardwired to recognize. It's like ancient Egypt's architectural DNA is still floating around. It really makes you look at things differently. So we've talked about their architecture, their achievements, even their obsession with the afterlife. But what about physical evidence? What have archaeologists dug up that really brings this civilization to life? We can't talk about ancient Egypt without mentioning the Rosetta Stone. It's like the ultimate historical cheat code. The Rosetta Stone. Remind us what that is again and why it's such a big deal. Picture this. It's 1799, and some archaeologists are digging around, and they stumble on this stone slab. Seems pretty ordinary, except it's got the same text carved on it, but in 3 different scripts. Hieroglyphs, something called Demonic, which was like their everyday language, and Ancient Greek. So it's like they stumbled on a translation guide. Exactly. It was like finding the key to a language that nobody had spoken for centuries. Amazing. So what did we learn from finally cracking the code of hieroglyphs? What secrets did the Rosetta Stone unlock? Oh, it opened up a whole new understanding of their culture. Suddenly, we weren't just looking at tombs and temples, we were reading their shopping lists, their love letters, even their tax complaints. Tax complaints? Some things never change, huh? What about other discoveries? Anything that really blew your mind? Oh, absolutely. Tutankhamun's tomb, for one. Talk about a time capsule. Ting Tai, right? Didn't they find his tomb practically untouched? Almost perfectly preserved. It was like stepping into a pharaoh's treasure chamber. Golden chariots, jewel-encrusted furniture, even board games. It was an incredible glimpse into life and death in ancient Egypt. Hold on, board games? They had times for games with all that pyramid building and afterlife planning going on. They knew how to have a good time. But you're right, these discoveries are incredibly valuable to researchers. Every little piece, from the grandest tomb to the humblest pottery shard, helps paint a more complete picture of this amazing civilization. So we've covered their architecture, their incredible achievements, even the board games. But let's go back to this idea that their beliefs might have actually influenced religions that came later. What are some of the connections we see there? Well, the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with the afterlife, and that's an idea that pops up again and again throughout history. It's like they were pioneers and thinking about what comes next. And it's a question that humans have been grappling with for millennia. It's fascinating stuff. So where do we go from here? What other intriguing connections are we missing? Well, there's one big one we haven't touched on yet. And we're back. We've been talking about ancient Egypt's possible influence on, well, everything that came after. It's like they were having this huge existential conversation, and the echoes are still bouncing around today. Right. And one of the loudest messages they sent out was definitely about the afterlife. They weren't just thinking about it, they were pouring it into their art, their buildings, their whole culture. It was a full-blown obsession, and a pretty complex one at that. Yeah, they weren't messing around. They had this whole elaborate system all figured out. It wasn't just, oh, there's something after death. It was like they were planning for a whole other life. Exactly. And that's where things get even more interesting. The idea of being judged after you die, your heart weighed against a feather to decide your fate. That's not just a cool visual, it's a serious moral concept. And it's not unique to ancient Egypt either. Wait, are you saying that other religions might have gotten those beliefs about the afterlife from the ancient Egyptians? Let's just say there are some pretty striking similarities. Look at Christianity, for example. Heaven and hell, the idea of being judged for what you did during your life. Those themes sound awfully familiar, don't they? It's like there's this thread running through history, connecting these ideas. It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Something from thousands of years ago is still shaping beliefs today. It really is. And it's not just the afterlife either. Remember Isis? The mother goddess. Protector associated with magic, even the mother of another powerful god, Horus. Oh yeah, Isis. I feel like we're about to connect another dot here. We might be. That whole idea of a divine mother figure, it pops up again and again throughout history. Think about Mary, mother of Jesus, in Christianity. Both revered figures associated with compassion, nurturing, that connection between humanity and the divine. So it's more than just one civilization's mythology. It's like they were tapping into something universal. Absolutely. And it makes you wonder what else they were onto. That research you shared, the idea that Kemet actually saw itself as heir to even older lost civilizations. It's a pretty intriguing thought. It really is. Like they were standing on the shoulders of giants we don't even know about yet. Makes you want to grab a shovel and get on the next flight to Egypt. Always more to discover, right? That's the truth. And hey, who knows? Maybe one day we'll actually uncover those ancient secrets. But in the meantime, we've got a lot to think about thanks to this deep dive. If you're as fascinated by ancient Egypt as we are, make sure to check out the show notes for even more mind-blowing info. Trust us, it's worth it.
Alright, get ready, because we are diving straight into ancient Kemet today. How exciting! It is. And you know what we're exploring? What's that? The 42 laws of Nod. Yeah, everywhere right now. People are really fascinated by this idea, this ancient ethical code. And it's ancient, right? Like we're talking way before a lot of the major religions we know today. Thousands of years ago, we're talking the Nile Valley civilization. Really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? I was reading one source, and it straight up called it the oldest moral and ethical code known to human beings. I mean, it's a bold statement. It is. So before we even get into the laws themselves, I gotta ask, what exactly is Mott? Right, gotta start with the basics. Well, Matt, it's not just some list of rules. Think of it more as it's a whole philosophy, a way of life, really. Truth, justice, order, balance. It's like everything in its right place, harmony, you know? So when we talk about Matt, we're talking about a whole worldview. Exactly, a way of being in the world. And this flourished in ancient Kemet, which today we call Egypt. Right, and that's an important thing to remember, that historical context. See, there's been this effort, to put it lightly, to just call it Egypt. Well, that's part of it, but I'm talking about this tendency, especially in Eurocentric narratives, to downplay how much Africans contributed to, well, everything. Spirituality, science, you name it. Like, renaming Kemet to Egypt is just one example. Right, like trying to erase a whole civilization. Yeah, exactly. And they even took the sacred language of Nebuchadnezzar and were like, oh, those are just hieroglyphics. Like they wanted to pretend it never happened. And yet, here we are talking about Matt. This knowledge survived. You see the legacy in kemetic practices still around today. And speaking of legacies, you're going there. Going where? To the question of, well, it almost seems like some of the ethical codes might have borrowed a bit from the 42 laws of Matt. You're talking about the plagiarism question? Yeah, like I was reading through these sources, and it does make you wonder. It's definitely a touchy subject. We got to be careful and nuanced how we approach this, for sure. But a lot of scholars out there, big names, they've pointed out some really interesting connections between the 42 laws and other ethical frameworks. So, like, are we talking Judaism? Yeah. Christianity? Oh, yeah. Even Islam. Wow, okay. So we're really talking about a potential blueprint for morality here. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? It really is. So are we saying that something like, say, the 10 Commandments? Are we saying that they might have taken some cues from the 42 laws? Well, when you take a look at what they actually say, there are definitely some striking similarities, like take respecting other people's stuff. Okay, like don't steal. Exactly, that's in both of them. Or how about being honest, keeping your promises, not messing with violence. So we're talking like basic rules for living together in a society, really. Exactly, and it makes you think, right, how have ideas about right and wrong changed over time? Across different cultures, the 42 laws could be a huge part of that story. It's like a big puzzle, and we're just trying to put the pieces together. But, okay, we keep talking about these laws, but I want to know what they actually say. Obviously, we can't go through all 42, but is there one that really stands out to you? Like something that's super relevant today? You know, there's one that really speaks to me, especially these days with like the internet and everything. Oh yeah, which one? It's Law 11. I have not closed my ears to truth. Whoa, that is thought out. Like, we are bombarded with information all the time now. You gotta be so careful what you believe. That's it, right? You gotta think for yourself, question things. It's more important than ever. Be open-minded, but not so open your brain falls out. Exactly. Okay, there's another one that I gotta bring up because I feel personally attacked. Oh no, which one? Okay, Law 35. Quote, I have not spoken angrily or arrogantly. End quote. No, that's a tough one. It is. I mean, haven't we all been there? But it does make you think about how you talk to people, you know? Yeah. Especially when you don't agree. Absolutely. It all does. That's that idea of not, you know? It's not about you as an individual. It's about the whole community. How we treat each other, how we build a world together. So it's like individual actions leading to bigger change. Exactly. And one of the things I found so fascinating in the research is that they actually call Mott a path to revolutionary change. Revolutionary, like, oh, let's throw the government revolutionary. No, not like that. It's more like inner revolution. It starts with you changing yourself first. Yes, like, if you really want the world to be different, then you got to embody those changes. Truth, justice, balance, all that. Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. But how do you actually do that? Like, how do we take this ancient wisdom and make it real in our lives? Well, the good news is we're seeing it happen. People are really resonating with this stuff. Whoa, like with Maud? Yeah. Kemetic spirituality is having a real moment. There are temples, organizations, all dedicated to keeping this knowledge alive. Oh, right. And then one of our sources wasn't the author, like, really involved in that whole world. Yeah, Bashir Muhammad Akin LA. He's a great example of this resurgence. It's not just about the past, it's about the present, you know? It's like this ancient knowledge is still alive and relevant today. That's the thing about truth. It endures. But here's the thing. When something's having a moment like this, we gotta be careful too. What do you mean? Well, it's important to approach something like kinetic spirituality with respect. You know, this isn't just some trendy thing. It's a whole culture, it's a history. Right, it's got deep roots in African tradition. We need to learn from those who came before us. Be humble. Listen, don't just take what you want and ignore the rest. Exactly. It's about honoring the source. It's amazing though when you think about it, like, these principles, these ideas, they're thousands of years old and we're still talking about them today. It's a testament to how important balance is, right? Living in alignment with truth and justice and harmony. Those are things that, I don't know, they just speak to something deep in us as humans, no matter what time period, what culture. Yeah, totally. It makes you think, like, what would happen if we took those ideas, that lens of man, and applied it to everything? Oh man, now you're talking. Like, imagine approaching social justice through that lens, or environmental issues, heck, even politics, trying to find that balance, you know, and just like fighting all the time. Exactly. Not us versus them. What about a world where everyone can thrive? Mop pushes you to ask those questions. It's a completely different way of thinking about the world. And don't forget about personal responsibility. That's a huge part of this too. Oh, right. Like, it's not just about following the rules someone hands you. It's about looking inward, making those changes in your own life. Exactly. You become the change. Then, hopefully, the world starts to reflect that. There's a quote, I can't remember what it said. It's something like, be the change you wish to see in the world. Right. That's not in a nutshell. And the 42 laws, they're like, you have a guidebook for doing that. Okay, so we've gone from ancient Kemet to like modern day life. And this is just scratching the surface. There's so much more to explore, so much depth to this. It's a lifelong journey, for sure. But if we had to sum up, what would you say? Are the 42 laws of man just some dusty old rules? Well, no way. They're timeless. A guidebook to living a good life, ethically, morally, and if they help create a more harmonious world along the way, even better. Especially when things feel so chaotic out there, people are looking for that, you know, some kind of guidance. And it's pretty amazing that we can find some of that wisdom in a civilization that existed thousands of years ago. Speaking of wisdom, something that really stuck with me from all of this research was that idea of balance between masculine and feminine energy. Like with the feather mod itself, right? Right. Not one being better than the other. It's about finding that harmony. Exactly. And it makes you wonder, what if we looked at everything that way? Not just ethics or justice, but everything. What if we stopped dividing everything into opposites and started looking for the balance? Something to think about, right? And on that note, we're going to leave you to ponder. Until next time, keep diving deep.